Waging Peace, Global Adventures of a Lifelong Activist by David Hartsough with Joyce Holliday. Conclusion. Proposal for Ending All War, an idea whose time has come. I would like to invite you to become active in a worldwide movement. David Swanson and I wrote a proposal to build a movement to end all war, an idea whose time has come. With very positive response, people from around the world are now organizing World Beyond War, a global movement to end all war and promote enduring peace. We hope you will sign the Declaration of Peace and help build this movement. All individuals and organizations all over the world are invited to sign a Declaration of Peace and help build a world beyond war, a global movement to end all war. This is the statement. I understand that wars and militarism make us less safe rather than protect us, that they kill, injure, and traumatize adults, children, and infants, severely damage the natural environment, erode civil liberties, and drain our economies, siphoning resources from life-affirming activities. I commit to engage in and support nonviolent efforts to end all war and preparations for war, and to create a sustainable and just peace. To sign this and to get involved in many different ways, visit http://worldbeyondwar, all one word, .org. And all these websites will be listed on the very last slide of this conclusion. Public opinion is moving against particular wars and the world spending of $2 trillion every year on war and preparations for war. We plan to announce the launching of a broad movement capable of ending war preparations and transitioning to a peaceful world. We are creating the tools necessary to communicate the facts about war and discard the myths. We are creating ways to assist organizations around the world that are working on partial steps in the direction of a war-free world, including developing peaceful means of achieving security and resolving conflict, and to increase widespread understanding of such steps as progress toward war's complete elimination. If unnecessary suffering on an enormous scale is to be avoided, we must abolish war. Some 180 million people died in wars in the 20th century. And while we have not yet repeated a war on the scale of World War II, wars are not going away. Their devastation continues, measured in terms of deaths, injuries, trauma, millions of people having to flee their homes, financial cost, environmental destruction, economic drain, and erosion of civil and political rights. Unless we want to risk catastrophic loss or even extinction, we must abolish war. Every war brings with it both massive destruction and the risk of uncontrolled escalation. We are facing a world of greater weapons proliferation, resource shortages, environmental pressures, and the largest human population the Earth has seen. In such a turbulent world, we must abolish sustained and coordinated militarized combat between groups, primarily governments, known as war, because its continuation puts all life on the planet at risk. If we abolish war, Humanity can not only survive and better address the climate crisis and other dangers, but will be able to create a better life for everyone. The reallocation of resources away from war promises a world whose advantages are beyond easy imagination. Some $2 trillion a year, roughly half from the United States and half from the rest of the world, is devoted to war and war preparation. Those funds could transform global efforts to create sustainable energy, agricultural, economic, health, and education systems. Redirection of war funding could save many times the lives that are taken by spending it on war. While abolition is a larger demand than partial disarmament, which will be a necessary step along the way, if the case for abolition is made convincingly, it has the potential to create support for serious and even total disarmament among people who would otherwise favor the maintenance of a large military for defense. Something that we've learned does not work, creates more enemies, and generates pressure for offensive war making. The first step in such a campaign must be persuading people of the possibility of and the urgent need for abolishing war. Awareness of the effectiveness of nonviolent action, nonviolent movements, and peaceful resolution of conflicts is growing rapidly, creating the increased possibility of persuading people that there are effective alternatives to war to resolve conflicts and achieve security. The reduction and eventual elimination of war and the repurposing of the military-industrial complex could be of great benefit to sectors of the world economy and of public services to which that investment could be transferred. We are creating a broad coalition encompassing civilian industries and advocates for green energy, education, housing, healthcare, and other fields, including civil liberties, environmental protections, children's rights, and the governments of cities, counties, states, provinces, and nations that have had to make major and painful cuts in social programs for their people. By demonstrating that war is not inevitable and that it is actually possible to eliminate war, this movement will develop the allies needed to make it a reality. Resistance, including by those profiting financially from wars, will be intense. Such interests are, of course, not invincible. Raytheon's stock was soaring in the summer of 2013 as the White House planned to send missiles into Syria, missiles that were not sent after dramatic public opposition arose. But ending all war will require defeating the propaganda of war promoters and countering the economic interests of war promoters with alternative economic possibilities. A wide variety of support for humanitarian and other particular varieties or imagined varieties of war will be countered with persuasive arguments and alternatives. We are creating a resource center that will put the best arguments against various types of war support at everyone's fingertips. By organizing internationally, we will use progress made in one nation to encourage other nations to match or surpass it without fear. By educating people whose governments make war at a distance about the human costs of war, largely one-sided, civilian, and on a scale not widely understood, we will build a broad-based moral demand for an end to war. By presenting the case that militarism and wars make us all less safe and decrease our quality of life, we will strip war of much of its power. By creating awareness of the economic trade-offs, we will revive support for a peace dividend. By explaining the illegality, immorality, and terrible costs of war and the availability of legal, nonviolent, and more effective means of defense and conflict resolution, we will build acceptance for what has only relatively recently been made into a radical proposal and ought to be viewed as a common sense initiative, the abolition of war. While a global movement is needed, this movement cannot ignore or reverse the reality of where the greatest support for war originates. The United States builds, sells, buys, stockpiles, and uses the most weapons, engages in the most conflicts, stations the most troops in the most countries, and carries out the most deadly and destructive wars. By these and other measures, the US government is the world's leading war maker and, in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Ending US militarism would eliminate the pressure that is driving many other nations to increase their military spending. It would deprive NATO of its leading advocate for and greatest participant in wars. It would cut off the largest supply of weapons to the Middle East and other regions. But war is not a US or Western problem alone. This movement will focus on wars and militarism around the globe, helping to create examples of effective alternatives to violence and war, and examples of demilitarization as a path to greater, not lesser, security. Short-term goals may include economic conversion commissions, partial disarmament, elimination of offensive but not defensive weapons, base closures, bans on particular weapons or tactics, promotion of diplomacy and international law, expansion of peace teams and human shields, promotion of non-military foreign aid and crisis prevention, placing restrictions on military recruitment, and providing potential soldiers with alternatives, drafting legislation to redirect war taxes into peace work, encouraging cultural exchange, discouraging racism, developing less destructive and exploitative lifestyles, the creation of a peace conversion task force to help communities make the transition from war making to meeting human and environmental needs, and expanding the global nonviolent peace force of civilian, trained, international, nonviolent peacekeepers and peacemakers who will be available to protect civilians and local peace and human rights workers endangered by conflicts in all parts of the world, and to help build peace where there is or has been violent conflict. To get involved, go to http://worldbeyondwar, all one word, .org. And this website will be listed in the final slide of this conclusion, along with other important websites. Resources for further study and action. What you can do. If you have been moved by the stories in this book, here are some things you can do. Together, we can make peaceful change possible. Personal development. 1, practice nonviolence in all areas of your life, thoughts, conversations, family and work relationships, and with challenging people and situations. Read Gandhi and King to gain a deeper understanding of nonviolence and how to integrate nonviolence into your life as you work for change. One valuable resource is http://www.godblessthewholeworld, all one word, .org. 2, explore nonviolent ways of relating and communicating where compassion and active listening guide your interactions with others. Alternatives to Violence Project and nonviolent communication trainings are excellent and engaging ways to practice these invaluable skills. 3, watch or listen to Democracy Now!, Bill Moyer's Journal on PBS, and public news stations, which are independently operated, non-commercial, and listener-supported. They provide a more progressive political orientation and counterbalance what is promoted by the mainstream media. 4, participate in a global exchange reality tour. These socially responsible educational tours develop a deeper understanding of the poverty, injustice, and violence facing so many around the world. Frequently, long-lasting personal relationships are made as you empower local communities and learn how to work for change in American policies, which are often the direct cause for these adverse conditions. http://www.globalexchange.org/tours. 5, be the change you want to see in the world. People seeking a caring, compassionate, just, environmentally sustainable, and peaceful world can begin by living their own lives by the values they would like to see in the world. Personal witness, speaking out. 6, write letters to the editor of your local newspaper and to members of Congress about issues which concern you. By contacting local, state, and federal elected officials and government agencies, you are speaking truth to power. 7, participate in a short-term international delegation to get to know people living in conflict areas and to experience their reality. Meet locals who are working for peace and justice and learn how you can become their ally. Witness for peace, interfaith peace builders, Meta peace teams, Christian peacemaker teams, Friends peace teams, all offer these valuable opportunities. 8, contact the above groups and volunteer to work on a peace team in a conflict area to help support local human rights defenders, protect civilian populations. An estimated 80% of the people killed in wars are now civilians, and support local peacekeepers working for nonviolent resolution of conflicts. Ask a local church, religious community, or civic organization to support you in volunteering for 3 months to a year doing this work. 9, counter recruitment. Educate young people who are considering the military, frequently to get financial assistance for a college education, about the reality of that choice and the horrors of war. The War Resisters League and the American Friends Service Committee both offer good educational resources for these efforts. Assist those who are considering the military with viable, peaceful alternatives and introduce them to veterans who have witnessed peace directly, such as Veterans for Peace. Where appropriate, help them to apply for conscientious objector status. The GI Rights Hotline offers good information regarding that process. Invite a Veterans for Peace speaker to come to your school or college or religious community. Discussion and study groups. 10, together with others who have read this book, share insights and stories which touched you or empowered you to address the problems of war, injustice, racism, and violence in our society. Which accounts motivated you to help create a more just, peaceful, nonviolent, and environmentally sustainable world? What would you like to do differently as a result of reading this book? 11, watch the DVD, A Force More Powerful, with others in your church, community, school, or university. It documents the history of 6 powerful nonviolent movements around the world. Discuss each featured episode, which explores some of the 20th century's major struggles in which nonviolent, people-powered movements have overcome oppression, dictatorship, and authoritarian rule. Downloadable study guides and comprehensive lesson plans for high school students are available on the website. The DVD is available in more than a dozen languages http://www.aforcemorepowerful, all one word, .org. 12. Read articles in Waging Nonviolence, People-Powered News and Analysis by authors like George Lakey, Ken Budigan, Kathy Kelly, John Deere, and Mary King. These articles are filled with stories of ordinary people facing conflicts, using nonviolent strategies and tactics, even under the most difficult of circumstances. Discuss your responses with others and decide what you would like to do to create nonviolent change. 13, create a study discussion group to read or view DVDs and books in the resources section of this book. Discuss your feelings, responses, insights on how nonviolent struggle works and what you might like to do together to put your beliefs into action. 14, to honor Martin Luther King Jr. on January 15th or any other day, organize a showing of one of the excellent films on Dr. King, such as King, From Montgomery to Memphis, or King, Go Beyond the Dream to Discover the Man by the History Channel, or HBO's film Boycott. Afterward, talk about what relevance King and the civil rights movement have for your lives and for our nation today. A study guide for this film is available for download, http://www.history.com/images/media, etc. In addition, 15, large public libraries often have good collections of DVDs on MLK and the civil rights movement, like Eyes on the Prize, America's Civil Rights Years, 1954 through 1965. Listen to some of the amazing talks at http://www.godblessthewholeworld, all one word, .org, and discuss them with friends. This free online educational resource features hundreds of videos, audio files, articles, and courses on social justice, spiritual activism, counter-oppression, environmentalism, plus many other topics on personal and global transformation. Organize a study group using Pache Ibene's workbook titled Engage, Exploring Nonviolent Living. This 12-part study and action program offers participants a wide variety of principles, stories, exercises, and readings for learning, practicing, and experimenting with the power of creative nonviolence for personal and social change. http://www.pachebene.org. That's PACEEBENE.org, all one word. Nonviolent low and no risk actions. 17, get involved in Pache Ibene's campaign Nonviolence to build a movement to end war, poverty, and the climate crisis. 18, identify a problem in your community, the nation, or the world, and find others who share your concern. Join together and organize to address that problem using Martin Luther King Jr.'s 6 principles of nonviolence and his steps in organizing nonviolent campaigns. Working together, we can create what King called the beloved community. 19, participate in peaceful demonstrations that focus on your area of concern: anti-war, national priorities, banking reform, immigration, education, healthcare, social security, etc. They are a good way to expand your contacts and energize your spirit for the longer campaigns. 20, work at the grassroots level. You don't need to go to Washington to create change. Start where you are, as Martin Luther King Jr. did with the bus boycott in Montgomery in 1955, and with the voting rights campaign in Selma, Alabama, 1965. Think globally, act locally. 21, whatever your spiritual or faith path, live by the values and beliefs you profess. Beliefs don't have much meaning without action. If you are part of a faith-based community, work to help make your church or spiritual community a beacon of justice, peace, and love in the world. 22, all the struggles, justice, peace, environmental sustainability, women's rights, etc., are interconnected. You don't need to do everything. Pick an issue you feel passionately about and focus your efforts on that. Find ways to support others who are working on different issues, especially at critical times when a major effort is needed. Direct action. 23. Participate in nonviolence trainings, which create opportunities for participants to learn more about the history and power of nonviolence, share fears and feelings, build solidarity with one another, and form affinity groups. Nonviolence trainings are often used as preparation for actions and give people a chance to learn specifics about that action, its tone, and legal ramifications, to role play interactions with police officials and others in the action, and to practice applying nonviolence in challenging situations. 24, speak truth to power with others. Develop a nonviolent campaign aimed at a specific injustice or issue. For example, gun violence, the environment, wars and occupations, the use of drones, or redefining our national priorities. Pick an achievable goal. Focus on that for some months or even longer. Quote, a campaign is a focused mobilization of energy with a clear objective over a time period that can be realistically sustained by those who identify with the cause. Quote, from George Lakey, History is a Weapon, Strategizing for a Living Revolution. Use King's 4 basic steps in any nonviolent campaign, from his letter from a Birmingham jail, April 1963, or refer to the Movement Action Plan in Bill Moyer's book, Doing Democracy, 2001, http://www.doingdemocracy.com. One example of a nonviolent campaign is the National Priorities Project, bringing the federal budget home. They seek to end the wars and military bases around the world and bring our tax dollars home for schools, healthcare for all, parks, job training, care for the elderly, Head Start, etc. nationalprioritiesproject.org. 25, in the spirit of Henry David Thoreau, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr., consider engaging in acts of nonviolent civil disobedience, nonviolent resistance, to challenge unjust laws or policies which you consider immoral or illegal under international law. These might include the use of drones, the use of torture, or nuclear weapons development. It is highly recommended that you do this with others so you can support one another, and that you go through nonviolence training first. 26, consider refusing to pay some or all of your taxes that pay for war. War tax resistance is an important way to withdraw your cooperation from participation in US wars. In order to sustain their war efforts, governments need young men and women willing to fight and kill, and they need the rest of us to pay our taxes to cover the cost of the soldiers, the bombs, the guns, the ammunition, nuclear weapons, the planes, and the aircraft carriers that enable them to continue fighting wars. Alexander Haig, President Nixon's chief of staff, as he looked out the White House window and saw over 200,000 anti-war demonstrators marching by, said, let them march all they want, as long as they pay their taxes. Contact the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee for assistance and additional information. 27, imagine what might happen if our country put even 10% of the money we presently spend on wars and military expenditures into building a world where every person has enough to eat, shelter, an opportunity for education, and access to medical care. We might become the most loved country in the world and the most secure. If you would like to work actively to support nonviolent movements around the world, contact peace workers at igc.org. Whatever you do, thank you. Together we shall overcome. Ten lessons learned from my life of activism. 1. Vision. It is important that we take the time to envision the community, nation, and world we would like to live in and create for our children and grandchildren. This long-term view or vision statement will be a continual source of inspiration. Then we can explore practical ways we can work with others who share our vision to create that kind of world. I personally envision a world without war, where there is justice for all, love for one another, peaceful resolution of conflicts, and environmental sustainability. 2, the oneness of all life. We are one human family. We need to understand that deep in our souls. We need to understand that deep in our souls and act on that conviction. I believe that through compassion, love, forgiveness, recognition of our oneness as a global community, and our willingness to struggle for that kind of world, we will realize worldwide justice and peace. 3, nonviolence, a powerful force. As Gandhi said, nonviolence is the most powerful force in the world, and it is an idea whose time has come. People all over the world are organizing nonviolent movements to bring about change. In Why Civil Resistance Works, Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stefan have documented that over the past 110 years, nonviolent movements have been twice as likely to succeed as violent movements, and much more likely to help create democratic societies without reverting to dictatorships or civil war. Four, nurture your spirit. Through nature, music, friends, meditation, reading, and other practices of personal and spiritual development, I have learned the importance of nurturing our spirits and pacing ourselves for the long haul. When we confront violence and injustice, it is our spiritual practices that help us discover our inner resources and enable us to move forward with the courage of our deepest convictions. Rumi, the Persian poet, said, "Only from the heart can you touch the sky." 5, all committed groups can create change. Margaret Mead once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." In times of have re-inspired me with the certainty that we can make a difference. Even a few committed students can make substantial change, as we did during our lunch counter sit-ins, Arlington, Virginia, in 1960. We had been inspired by 4 African-American freshmen who sat down at Woolworth's whites-only lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, in February 1960. Their actions sparked many sit-ins like ours and led to the desegregation of lunch counters throughout the South. Ordinary people can make change. The most successful campaigns I have participated in were with friends who shared concerns and organized together to make changes in the larger society. Our schools, churches, and community organizations are excellent places to develop such support groups. Although one person can make a difference, it can be very challenging working alone. However, together, we can overcome. 6, sustained struggle. Every major movement that I have studied or been a part of required sustained struggle over months and even years to bring about fundamental changes in our society. Examples include the abolitionist movement, the movement for women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the United Farm Workers movement, the sanctuary movement, and many others. All had the common thread of sustained resistance, energy, and vision. Seven, good strategy. Yes, holding a sign and putting a bumper sticker on our car is important. But if we want to bring about fundamental change in our society, we need to create long-range goals that build toward our vision for the future, and then develop good strategy and sustain campaigns to achieve those goals. See George Lakey's book, Toward a Living Revolution, a 5-stage framework for creating radical social change. Peace News Press, London, 2012. 8, overcome our fear. Do everything you can to overcome your fear. Governments and other systems try to instill fear in us to control and immobilize us. Claiming that Iraq had concealed weapons of mass destruction scared people and gave the Bush administration justification to invade Iraq, even though no such weapons were found. We must not fall into the traps of disinformation set by the authorities. Fear is a major impediment to speaking truth to power, to acting to stop wars and injustice, and to whistleblowing. The more we overcome it, the more powerful and united we become. A supportive community is very important in overcoming our fears. 9, truth. As Gandhi said, let your lives be experiments with truth. We must experiment with active nonviolence and keep hope alive. I share Gandhi's conviction that, quote, things undreamt of are daily being seen. The impossible is ever becoming possible. We are constantly being astonished these days at the amazing discoveries in the field of violence, but I maintain that far more undreamt of and seemingly impossible discoveries will be made in the field of nonviolence, unquote. 10, telling our stories. Sharing our stories and experiments with truth is critically important. We can empower one another with our stories. There are many inspiring accounts of active nonviolent movements, such as those portrayed in A Force More Powerful. Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, when people decide they want to be free, there is nothing that can stop them. I invite you to share your stories of experiments with active nonviolence on the website for this book and help challenge others to join in making a difference. David Hartsough's sentencing statement for nonviolent protest opposing drones at Beale Air Force Base in California. David was arrested along with 8 others, blocking 2 entrances at Beale Air Force Base, where they closed the main entrance for over 3 hours. Drones have killed thousands of innocent civilians and are immoral and illegal under US and international laws. They also recruit many more people into Al-Qaeda. We are one human family. All people in the world are children of God and are our brothers and sisters. If someone attacks our blood brother or sister, we would do everything in our power to stop them. This is the way we feel about innocent civilians being killed by drones in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Yemen. 178 children and thousands of other civilians have been killed by drones in Pakistan and Yemen. Does this strengthen our national security? Is this making the world a safer place? Drones are totally immoral and are against everything we have been taught in our religious faiths. Love one another, love your enemy, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is a question of religious freedom. I am a Quaker, and my religious faith requires me to try to stop the killing of innocent people. How would we feel if Russians or Chinese or Afghanis or Pakistanis were flying drones over the United States and killing American people? It is illegal under international law to go into another country and drop bombs on people our government doesn't like. The Nuremberg Principles require citizens to attempt to stop crimes against humanity, and killing innocent civilians is a crime against humanity. Doing nothing or remaining silent is complicity in these crimes. In protesting at Beale Air Force Base, I was trying to uphold international law. The United States is making decisions to kill people without them ever coming before a court or found guilty. The US government is playing judge, jury, and executioner. Is this what we call the rule of law? Using drones and killing many innocent people is creating more and more enemies of the United States. Every person we kill has at least 50 family members and friends who will mourn the loss of their loved ones. Many will seek revenge on the people and nation that has killed their loved ones or friends. Instead of drones and dropping bombs on people, we need to send Peace Corps people to build schools and medical clinics and help people in these countries recover from the wounds of war. We could be the most loved country on earth rather than the most hated. By our silence, we condone this senseless killing. We must speak out and act to stop this madness. By our nonviolent protest at Beale Air Force Base, we were acting to uphold God's law, US law, the Nuremberg Principles, and international law. We call on our fellow Americans, people in churches and synagogues and mosques, students, all people of conscience, to join us in stopping drones before they kill more innocent people and recruit more people into Al-Qaeda. Unfortunately, our war on terror is a recipe for perpetual wars and endless suffering and death for people around the world. Judge Delaney, at a time when our country is preparing to rain down missiles and bombs on Syria, which could start a much larger war in the Middle East, killing thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps the best place for people of conscience is behind bars. I am at peace with whatever you sentence me to. I cannot pay a fine or accept probation for a nonviolent action in which I was trying to uphold God's law, US law, and international law. Judge, if you so decide, I am ready to do community service or spend time in prison.